And then I'm going to share my screen. Right. Sorry, can't even work out how to start the presentation. Okay, can everyone see my screen at the moment? Someone just give me a thumbs up. Yeah. So yeah, I'm just gonna just go through these fundamentals of the pickup and the drive phase. Okay. So yeah, just to add, every time I talk about rowing, I always try and say this. There's a lot of different ways of rowing that people teach. I'm not saying this is the only way, but this is the way that, from my own experience and learning, that I believe is the best way. So I think with a lot of things, there's a lot of really good information online. Obviously, if you're on this call, you're obviously quite keen to hear some different ideas, but I would like strongly encourage everybody to just always try and get out there and go on Instagram, go on YouTube, and just try and just teach yourself about rowing, because especially at this club, we have a lot of people that single scull. This way that I'm trying to coach might not be the best way for you to row. There are different ways of doing it. So I would strongly encourage everyone to kind of take an interest in it yourself, and don't be afraid to try different things. Here. Okay, so the fundamentals, in my opinion, of a good pickup and drive phase have to be in this order. So in terms of position, that means the position that you're sitting in as the boat is coming towards you, kind of just before you put the blades in, to get the connection and then to get the acceleration. Okay, so it's really important that you get them in that order. So it's letting more people in. Yeah, so that's what I'm going to talk about here. So before we go any further with the presentation, I'm just going to show you two examples. Can everyone see this screen now with the video on? No? Okay, stop sharing that. Everyone see that now? Yeah. Okay, so this is the Swiss men's lightweight four. This is in the World Championships the year before they won the Olympics. And I'd say as an example of sweep rowing, I would probably say this is the best that I've ever seen, particularly the guy at stroke. So yeah, if you think about those things that I kind of just touched on, that getting that position right into the front, taking the time to connect, and then as a result being able to accelerate the boat for a long time is the skill that everybody wants to develop. I'd say that this is probably one of the best examples in sweep, or probably the best example in a sweep boat that you will see of how that looks in kind of real time in the middle of a race. I've got slow-mo versions of all these that we're going to watch after this as well. And yeah, I'm a kind of big believer as well of just always using like good example of rowing as the best way to work out how to do it yourself. So this is the Dutch men's quad that won the World Championships in the last time it went in 2019. For me, this is the best crew I've ever seen in sweep or sculling. And you see kind of what I'm going to talk about today. They just absolutely nail every single aspect of that. Particularly what we're going to talk about with relaxation. I think that you see that in a lot of sports. If somebody's doing it well, it looks absolutely effortless, and I think for me they're kind of the epitome of that. So I'm just going to go back to sharing the presentation. Sorry. Okay, so front end position to start. Again, really good to be able to pause things and just see positions like this. So when I'm coaching, I always talk a lot about angles. So what I'm what I'm talking about here, when we're trying to get into the in that good position at the front, you can see those three angles that I've drawn on there. So the angle of the ankle, obviously low down, then the angle of the knee, and then the angle of the hip. Yeah, I kind of wanted to touch on this first because the only way that you can get better at getting into a better position like this is working off the water. So obviously now we're going to have a period of a couple of weeks where we're not going to be able to get out. I would kind of really encourage everyone to just have a little think about especially your ankle mobility. So from my experience in rowing, it tends to be that ankle mobility that people probably are the least educated on and probably know the least amount. Least about, sorry. The knee angle, generally, unless you've had a knee injury, most people can flex their knees because you walk around all day, generally bend down to pick things up. And then that hip angle as well. I think the one kind of unusual thing about rowing is that you don't go into the patch position in your day-to-day life. So you know, maybe, yeah, if you pick something up off the floor, but you're never going to be picking something up off the floor with your chest up and putting your arm out really wide. So I think it is very easily neglected. And actually, you know, I see a lot of people rowing and, or someone will say, like, oh, you know, do you think I should, you know, lengthen my blades by 2 centimeters? Will it make me go faster? And then you see them rowing around and they don't have the mobility to even get to full slide. So kind of when people ask me stuff like that, it's kind of like, well, if you just went away and worked on that for probably 15 minutes a day, you would go exponentially faster than any rigging change that you could make. So a really key thing before I move on to the next slide is as you'll see that all of those angles are closing. Obviously, the further forward that you get, the hip angle closes, the knee angle and the ankle angle closes as well. And when you get into that front end position, that's like priming you to then be able to generate power when you connect. So as I've said there, the power comes when you open out those angles. So if you think of when you what's called a triple extension, so extending your hip, your knee and your ankle, is the same thing as when you see someone kind of diving off a diving board at the start of a swimming race, or trying to jump as high as they can, or kind of weightlifting. If you lifting a deadlift or doing a power clean, it's all that same movement. And for any human being, that triple extension is how you generate the most force possible. And maybe like might get some absolute freak of a strong man who can generate more force or lift more weight in a different way. But for any of us day to day, that triple extension is how you generate the most power. So yeah, like in the simplest terms, like those angles have got to be closed to be able to drive them open. So if you don't close the angles, then you're ultimately just limiting your ability to produce power and then drive them open as well. And as I've said there, ultimately just limiting your boat speed. And then the other thing with the position is just relaxation. And you know, you see so many people out on the river. I'm sure you've all felt it yourself. I definitely have. Where you're having those like sessions where everything's going wrong and you're super frustrated, and 9 times out of 10, if it's so hard to flick that switch, but 9 times out of 10, if you just relax, your session would start going so much better. And so yeah, as I've said, that your length in the water is dictated entirely by your length on the recovery. So if you don't feel comfortable getting out to full slide on the recovery, then you're only ever going to be taking a shorter stroke on the drive. That makes sense. So wherever you roll out to and place the blades dictates how long your stroke is going to be. So you know, don't limit yourself by a being super tense and b not taking care of that like mobility side, which is so easy to do. I'm happy to. I haven't put them on the slides, but there's a couple of like good ankle mobility exercises I can send out by Katie afterwards. But yeah, that would be like my one of my biggest takeaways from this is just really think about that mobility. Okay, so once you've gone through that, you're in that right position. How do you then connect to the water? This is again so easy to overcomplicate, but it's literally as simple as that. If you get to the front, first thing you do, put your blades into the water, or the spoon into the water, and then just push on the foot plate. Okay, so that that, in the simplest terms, is how you create your connection to the water. Okay, so if the spoons are covered, you apply that pressure to the foot plate, it then creates pressure on the face of the blade, and then you've got something to push against to accelerate the boat. Okay, so again, it's a super simple sequence, but it's just so easy to get wrong. And as soon as you go out of that sequence, you start trying to push on the foot plate before the blade's in, or you pull on the handles rather than push on the foot plate. Again, not only do you not create the right connection, but you just cut the sequence short, and ultimately you're going to go slower as a result. The way I always try and kind of get this through on the water is think of it in the sequence of hands and then feet. So imagine you're at the front end of the stroke, boat's coming towards you. You've got to get it in that sequence where your hands are going to place the blades into the water, and then once you've taken care of that, then your feet then pick the boat up. So I kind of like to think of it as almost like a traffic light system of a red light and a green light, that only once the hands have come up, that's the red light saying not yet, then you get that green light of like, okay, now I can push on the feet. And again, it's such like a subtle timing, subtle skill, but it's so hard to get it right. And that's, you know, I remember the first time ever going to watch a World Championships, and the one thing that stood out to me was that, like, it didn't matter if the crew was gold medalist or coming last in the D final, every single crew I saw there did that really well, because you can't get to a World Championship level if you don't get those basics really right. And then a good thing that's like a nice signal if you're out on the water, you'll know if you get it right, because the blade will lock into the water, and after that, the spoon that's in the water should be silent. So if it's silent, you know you're connected and you've got something to push against that you're going to move the boat past. But again, if you get that sequence wrong, you'll also get that kind of audible signal that you'll hear that blade kind of tearing through the water and washing out. I'm sure we've all done plenty of strokes like that. I know I certainly have, to know what that sounds like. And I always just think of that as soon as you hear that washing of the blade, that's just the sound of energy being wasted, because it's energy that's moving the water that could have gone into moving the boat. So, you know, that's a really good thing to think about when you're out on your own, is just try and row with the blades really quiet. Like, I remember the first time I ever did that was rowing in an 8, and Rusty Williams, who was a coach at UL, just got us to row in pairs. And he just said you have to row as quietly as possible, and he wouldn't let us move on to a different pair until we'd done it for 10 strokes in a row. And to be fair, the difference after that was huge. So yeah, that's a really good thing that you can work on when you're out on your own on the water. Yeah, so once you've got that connection, then I always like to think of the drive phase as being almost like the most simple part of the stroke, is that all you need to think about doing is just pushing the boat away. In terms of the physics, is that, you know, if you increase your force on the foot plate and you maintain the same connection to the water, then the boat speed is going to increase through the drive. And I know that there's, you know, like talking to other coaches, it would say like you're actively trying to put force on the handle at the finish, but the way I always coach it is you just keep pushing the boat away, and eventually the handles are going to reach your body. And if you get into that feeling of trying to get the handles through to your body as quickly as possible, then chances are that you either bent the arms too early or that you just lost connection to the water. I think that when you see good rowing, like we're going to watch a few more examples, especially on the drive phase, there should never be a sudden acceleration. Like I coach a lot of crews, especially new combinations that are going out, and you kind of see that the handle will be coming in at one speed here, and then all of a sudden it will accelerate to the body. And the only reason the handle is accelerated is because the blade is no longer connected to the water. So that's another really key thing, is that you kind of see on this next slide. It took me a while to find this picture, but that's another really, really difficult skill to get, is that even though your legs are flat and that body angle, that hip angle has started to open out, that you're actually still actively trying to push the foot plate away. And I remember when I was still rowing, I had that kind of eureka moment. I can't remember who was coaching me, but they just said, from when you put the blade in until when you take it out, just try and push the foot plate as far past your handles as you possibly can. And that was a really good cue that I still think about. I still use that now when I'm coaching, is that even as the handles are maybe kind of crossing over and coming through to your body, you're still actively trying to push the boat away for as long as possible. And again, that really helps with the finish timing. So as I put there, as you drive through to the finish of the stroke, basically, as long as when you get to that last possible moment, you can't push on the feet any longer, that's when you need to take the blades out. And that's another really common mistake I see with a lot of crews, is people just sitting back way too far. There's no longer any pressure on the feet. So as soon as you don't have that foot connection anymore, you're basically slowing the boat down, or in my opinion anyway. So yeah, just really important to just maintain that connection through the feet, and just from when the blade goes in until when it comes out, just push. And as long as you accelerate, the boat will accelerate as well. Like I said, there's other details you can go into, but I'm trying to keep this as simple as possible. And for me, just getting those 3 points right is going to give you like 90% of the speed in the boat. So just to recap, as I said there, getting into that comfortable position, really important, but being comfortable 9 times out of 10 is going to come from what you're doing off the water. So working on that mobility, having good stability kind of through your core, being able to hold that position into the front, and just being confident as well. Like if you're someone who doesn't like, and I was the same when I started rowing. I was almost like really scared to get all the way out to the front because I was like, oh, it's really unstable. So I mean, what else can you do but just try and train that position, like get used to sitting out front stops, do like first half of the leg drive, first 2 inches of the drive, and just you've got to build confidence. But as soon if you have those few strokes where you get that sequence right at the front, and you'll feel that connection, and you feel like you just be able to hang off the handles and push, and that'll just give you the confidence to keep going. And then sequencing of hands and then feet is going to give you the connection, and then just nice and simple with that drive phase, just increasing the force on the foot stretcher, and that's going to give you your speed, and those kind of like nice long pressed out strokes are going to give you good distance per stroke. One of my favorite exercises, I'm sure everyone on this call who I coach will attest to, is just rowing with the blade flat on the water, is what I call skimming. So it's really interesting that as soon as basically you roll up to front stops, and then without squaring your blade, you just try and push the boat away as fast as possible and as hard as possible, and accelerate the boat without the blades gripping the water. And that just really immediately just makes you realize how simple the drive phase is. I'll actually put a video. I'm pretty sure I've got a video of that I can put into this folder as well, so you have a better idea of what that is. But yeah, I think that exercise for me always works the best. It's like a huge, I guess, like return on investment of your time. Is that you can do 5 skimming strokes and then paddle off, and it'll have a massive increase on your paddling after that. So yeah, I'm gonna stop the presentation, and I'm just going to go back through a couple more of those videos. So this is, I guess, as more like a mortal level of crew. This is Yale University, obviously one of the top universities in the United States, or the top university. Maybe mortal wasn't a good, I mean, they're still pretty good, but they're not quite that kind of senior international level. But I remember seeing this for the first time, and just, I feel like for me, this is a really, really nice example of just that long push on the feet. And you can see that once their blades have gripped the water, just how long they push on the boat for. And there's no tension up in their arms. It's just really simple. It's just the blade goes in. Show you the slow-mo version of that as well. Yeah, it's just a really nice example of just the blade going in and just getting that really nice kind of long and simple push. And you can just see, you can see there, I really like this to watch rowing from this kind of lateral side view of just how long the legs are connected. And as I was saying earlier, just that even once your body's opened out and the handle's coming through towards your ribs, you can still get that really nice long push on the feet. Yeah, and then just have a look at the Dutch quad in slow-mo. This view is slightly better. Yeah, you can just see how, as we were saying, as you're coming into the front, you can see already, sorry, you can't really see where I'm pointing on the screen, but just see how that the hip angle there is already closed, the knee angle is closing, and then the ankle angle is closing as well, and that's kind of bringing the boat to them. Then you can see blades are in, and then already there, they're pushing the boat away. And you can just see another really good, really nice cue I always use when I'm coaching is just trying to leave the handles out in front of the seat. And you can see from there that if you think of where the seat is, there's still maximum distance between the handles and the seat. And especially in sculling, I'd always try and just leave the handles out and keep that distance as long as you can. So the handles should only come over the seat once your hip angle starts to open. So about there, you can just see now the arms are slightly starting to break. And you can just see how kind of loose and fluid they are. What I really like about that quad is just how easy their finish and release is. It's just like that tiny, tiny little movement with the hands to take the blades out. And as I said, for me, that was the best crew I've ever seen. Actually, we're in Austria to watch them in the semi-final in 2019, and I was like, honestly, I was like getting a bit emotional that I'd actually seen them in real life, because I was like, I've followed them all season, and now I get to see them live. And then I think that was probably the best quad I've seen. I think the athlete at stroke here, Kerry Gala, this is probably the best. I can't really think of seeing much better individual rowing. So just wait till the camera pans round. So what I really like about her is just how calm everything looks and how fluid. And as I was saying earlier, that once you're connected, there should never be that sudden acceleration on the handle. And I think this is what she does almost better than anyone else I think I've ever seen. So just for some context, this is the final at Henley, where they're racing the Chinese pair, I think. And this was a record-breaking performance. So I know that the women's pair hasn't been around as long as some other events, but yeah, I mean, if you watch the World Championship final from this year as well, she's again just looks so kind of impassive, so chilled. And it just, obviously it's incredibly hard work, but yeah, I think just getting that easy connection and just long push on the feet, again, probably individually does that better than almost anyone else I've ever seen. But again, like the good thing about that's everything I had yet. Obviously, at the moment, we all have, or we probably have more time in our hands than we had previously. We live in a pretty amazing time now that we kind of like a lot of the best athletes and coaches in the world are just freely putting stuff on YouTube or on Instagram. I just think that, 25 years ago, if you just couldn't get access to that kind of information, but now all those people are putting stuff on. Like you can see all these amazing races from the World Championships, from Henley and everything, and just there's so much good rowing around. And yeah, as I said, I like just really encourage everyone to kind of just look around and see what, sometimes you just notice one thing about a crew and it will just stick with you. But I think that's what made a huge difference for me when I started out coaching, is I had a few years where I kind of just drifted through, and then once I really started taking a proper interest in it, that's you kind of realize what works for some crews and what doesn't work for other crews, but ultimately just how to make a boat go fast is universally quite similar. So, yeah, that's everything I had to say for this time around. So anyone got any questions on anything? Oh, this is like every other talk I've ever had.
Can I ask one thing, Kieran? That was really well put. Thank you.
Thanks.
In terms of the fingers,
yeah.
So with all this, so how light are you throughout the stroke? How much pressure do you put on?
So yeah, that was something I was going to add, but I kind of didn't want to go into too much detail. Is that I think that yeah, I think you can really see on that Dutch quad that their grip on the handles doesn't really change that much around the back. And I think that when you square over, what I would always coach is that from the inside of your elbow to the back of your knuckle should be a straight line, and you should have the kind of maximum area of fingers on the blade, but without bending your wrist either way. So you never want to be holding it in the palm of your hand. But yeah, that kind of ties into that connection at the front end, and that's another big point I coach is that once the blade has gone in, you want to feel the pressure on your foot plate first, and then as a result of that, you then feel the pressure on the back of your fingers. So if you feel the pressure on your fingers immediately, it just means that you're very likely to have either bent the arms or kind of opened that body out a little bit too early. But yeah, in terms of grip, I'd say like you want to be as light as you can whilst having maximum contact with the handles. That's how I would say. I think that, yeah, I remember when I was being taught to scull, I was always taught to do like a lot of the kind of like rolling in the fingers, but I feel like that's not super efficient when you're going up at higher rates. But obviously that's the beauty of single sculling is you can basically do whatever you want because no one has to match you. And if if you look at like any world championship final, like men's or women's singles, they'll all be rowing completely differently, and they'll probably be doing something that no coach would ever tell them to do, but ultimately they're still going fast. So yeah. Claire, you got a question? Sorry.
Yeah, I was just going to say, obviously you've got some juniors on here, you've got some seniors, and you've got some masters folk who are maybe less flexible.
Yeah.
And I'm laughing that you mentioned ankles, because I guess I won't be the only one who's doing more running than normal at the moment, and actually feeling like my ankles and calves are getting tighter, which is probably not helpful given 0.1 ankles.
Yeah.
I'm like, any suggestions? Because at the moment, like it's just general try and stretch, but is there anything specific you go, like these are your top 3, think about or something?
The first thing is knowing how to test your ankle mobility. So the easiest way to do it is I can send a video again, is just by putting your foot next to a wall and just being able to kind of push your knee forward over the line of your toes, and you measure how far your toes are away from the wall before your knee can't touch it without your heel rising up. Does that make sense?
Yeah,
I'll send a video because
yeah, that'd be great if you could do that. That'd be really useful, please, Kieran.
And then yeah, I think with ankle mobility, it's just about kind of trying to work that range that you're able to keep your foot flat on the ground and try and just get your knee further over your toe. So there's a couple of exercises you can do with a band. If you've got a weight, it's really good to try and get a weight on top of your knee, and that just helps to kind of push that range a little bit more. But yeah, I'll send some videos on ankle mobility because the video I'll send will explain it a lot better than I can. That's not my area of expertise.
No, it's just like, I'm sure I'm not the only one who's doing more running, and actually that bit of my legs is probably feeling worse than anything else at the moment.
Yeah, that's what happens every time we come back, or I've seen with the seniors, is every time we come back from the summer or from a lockdown, everyone's rowing terribly. I was like, they're like, I don't know what's happened. It's like, well, how much mobility have you been doing? Like 0. Like, well, you can't get to the front in the proper position, so you you're going to have a miserable time, basically. But they never learn. Stephen, were you raising your hand there? You're on mute. Still on mute, Stephen. Maybe I can unmute him.
Not unmuting.
Yeah, no, you're there. You're unmuted now. Yeah.
Sorry,
yes, we didn't get any of that.
Yeah, I've got stiff ankles, so I rely on my other arch, which is the ball of the foot arch, the metatarsophalangeal arch.
Yeah.
What's wrong with relying on that and not having flexible ankles? I mean, your heel comes off, doesn't it? But
yeah. Well, so you, I don't quite understand what you're saying. Sorry.
Well, as you come to the front, ideally, if you've got flexible ankles, your heel stays longer on the tread. And because I can't do that, my heel's coming off.
Oh, so you're saying you raise your heel up a little bit earlier and higher, yeah. I mean, obviously, it's you've got to change your style based on what your body can do. I would say the main reason I would say the main reason you want to have the ankle mobility is ultimately if your ankles are super tight, that the closer you get to front stops, the more likely you are to lose that hip angle. So there's got to be some give somewhere. So a lot of the time, if it's not in your ankle, it's going to end up that your hips are going to roll underneath, and you're not going to be able to keep that hip angle closed at the front end. And also, the earlier you can drive your heels down and connect your heels to the foot plate, for most people, you're going to get better engagement from your glutes, which is obviously going to help you into the second half of the stroke. But yeah, there's nothing. Yeah, obviously you have to make adjustments, and obviously you can raise your seat, put wedges under your feet. There's adjustments you can make to your boat to kind of accommodate it. But yeah, I think mobility is always a good place to start in any sport as well, not just rowing. You know, think of like weightlifting, boxing, everything. You need to be able to actually do the movement under no stress before you can start doing it either for a longer period or at a higher intensity.
Thanks.
Problem. Any more? No, cool. Well, thank you all for your time. Hopefully that was useful. As I said, happy to do another talk in a couple of weeks' time, and maybe get a little library going so that everyone has something to work on when they get back onto the water. Yeah, I will put this talk up onto YouTube, so if you want to watch it back, you can. And yeah, I'll get those ankle mobility videos sent out to Katie as well. Cool. Thanks all for your time.
Thank you, Kieran.
Thanks, Kieran. Don't forget, next Tuesday, Kate Thorne is going to do a nutrition talk for everyone. She's